Chief of Crystal and Deputy Chief of Crystal. This is our second time doing this web forum, so I think those that have tuned in the first time know us, but just for the sakes of those that have maybe joined the first time, we'll do some quick introductions. I'll start. My name is Ryan Adams. I'm a Crystal resident. I've been here almost a year. It's going to be a year on December 27th, so I'm excited. I think it's been a great year of getting to know you guys and fellow community members and getting more involved in the community as I'd hoped to by moving here. I moved from Minneapolis, where I was more of a number. Here I feel invested. I'll be here for a long time, and community engagement and such is an interest to me. And I have a lot of concern and such for policing and how it's done and how we utilize it in our community. And so that's what's led to me getting involved and talking to you guys today. I'm partnered for 8 years. I've got a couple cats, and I enjoy my opportunities to play soccer when COVID permits.
Well, hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Revering. I'm the police chief here in Crystal. I've been with the city for 23 years. Yeah, it's 23 years. It's crazy how time goes so fast.
She started when she was 10.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, to all of you who can see my face, that clearly is not the case, but thank you. I started here as a community service officer and then just rose through the ranks. I've been police chief for the last 8 years. Married to a wonderful man who puts up with me, and I have two step kids, 2 boys who are 27 and 25. So that's a little bit about me. I will say that, over the last several months here, Ryan has put this community forum together, and it's been appreciated because Brian and I'm just laughing right now at Anne's message because she's saying she has no camera, but she can hear us, which is great. For Brian and I, this is something that we're very passionate about, is community engagement and making sure that our community members, when they have questions, comments, concerns about the police department, that we have a forum to chat about these things, but also making sure that everybody who's listening to that lives in our community, they can call either one of us at any time. It doesn't just have to be at this forum. So thank you, Ryan, for setting this up.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And my name is Brian Hubbard. I'm the deputy chief here. I've been in this role for about 2.5 years. I grew up in Crystal and live about 4 blocks out of the city in New Hope. Married for 26 years, and the more you get to know me, the more you're surprised that someone would stick with me for that long. And we have 3 teenagers. And my interest in coming into this role was not really looking for a position or this position in particular, but this was a chance for me, after having a previous life in the nonprofit world and a current life in law enforcement. This was a chance for me to do what I wasn't able to do in either of those 2 careers up to that point, which was to serve in the community that I live and work and frequent. And so that's my motivation, and my role is really the chief's left hand to whatever it is that she needs help with.
We're very lucky to have him, Ryan. I can't even tell you the long list of things that he does.
Yeah, and just in my experience of working with both of you, it's evident the duo effect that you guys have, and especially even balancing the conversation and perspective, with members of our group throughout the past 5 engagements. So it's great to have in our city for sure. With that said, the past 4 times we've met, we've talked about a lot of the questions that our community members have had. There hasn't been any new questions per se. There'll be opportunities for us to kind of clarify and remind the community of some of the questions as it pertains to the solutions that we hope to just kind of talk through. Before I get on that road, I'm just kind of curious of, since we last met, have there been any changes either from Post or from Crystal PD as to policy, data, anything that to open up our conversation?
Yeah, great great question. We actually, Brian and I just had a meeting today with several of our team and members. And as you know, we had been discussing at other meetings that we've had regarding data collection with regards to use of force and race. We're excited that Hennepin County Dispatch had originally been doing a pilot program with another city regarding data collection on race, and now they've opened that up to other communities. And so we're excited that we will be in that group and starting that here in the beginning of the year of 21 to start collecting the race data. And currently, Brian is working on with several of our use of force instructors, our use of force policy, and reviewing and modifying and changing some of our use of force policy. I think we talked about, and I'll have Brian step in here too, but I think we talked about a few times, that 8 can't wait. A lot of people were asking about the banning of chokeholds. We had that in our policy for a number of years prior to the George Floyd tragedy that happened. So that's something that obviously is going to stay in our policy. But Brian, if you want to touch on just a few things that you're going through right now.
Sure. We had started this process in the spring of kind of we do this from time to time with all the policies, but we have been really focused on a wholesale deep dive review of. We really have 2 policies that pertain. One's a use of force policy, and one is a firearms policy that's specific to firearms. The use of force policy is more overreaching, if you will, comprehensive. And so we are diving deep into both of those, and we're hoping to look for those revisions probably in early January. Another thing that we're looking at that kind of fits along with that is we currently have a process for reporting and evaluating use of force incidents, and we are really attempting to also look at that and see if we can be doing more or a deeper dive in that area. And then the other piece that we really haven't done before, because we really haven't, frankly, we haven't created or haven't had a mechanism to do it, is our goal for 2021 is to actually be able to report that data as a part of our annual report. So right now, if you called and asked for it, that would be a pretty heavy lift for us, the way we've got it, the way we categorize it, catalog stuff. And so our goal is that starting January 1, we will be able to, you ask on certain date X for what's the information to date in your use of force, that we will be able to report that in a way that that people can see and understand and has an explanation with it. And I think more importantly, I think that there's certainly the transparency piece of people being able to see that. Frankly, for me, the where that comes into play is as we look at what and how we're evaluating those things. There also then lies an opportunity for us to make sure internally that we have a good process to be able to evaluate those incidents when they happen and determine if there are training opportunities, if there are things that we want to change about how we're going about things. So that would be on the high level of kind of what we're working on in that arena.
Awesome. Thanks for the insight. Kind of follow up to what you've said. When we talk about data, how can the community, other than maybe a web page refresh, expect to learn of some of these things? And then after, say, a year, because data the first few months is going to be just data points. What are your guys' thoughts on using that? What are your goals of that data to translate into action or change?
Yeah, so Ryan, when Brian talks about our annual report, so every year we produce an annual report for the city council. And in that annual report, it talks about all of the community engagement that we've done throughout the year, but also the numbers, the statistics about arrests for Part 1 and Part 2 crimes. So, for example, how many domestic assaults did we have in a year? How many traffic contacts did we have in a year? How many DWI arrests? That sort of thing. So, part of what Brian is discussing about the data collection regarding race and regarding use of force is going to be now also in that annual report. Obviously, for the first year, we're not going to have really anything to compare it to, if you will. By the second year, obviously, we're going to be able to see some numbers to see, what is it that that we're seeing? Is it numbers that are, are we seeing a higher increase in a certain use of force due to the type of call for service that we're going to? Are we seeing, no use of force information or none at all that we're seeing because of the tactics that we're using? So it is something that obviously we're going to be looking at. It's hard to describe what it is we're going to do with it when we don't really know yet what that numbers or what the information is yet, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's just kind of nice to consider or hear more of what your guys' plans are and how we can expect to see those things. When is your report from this year due out?
Yep, good question. So we wait until we receive what's called the FBI actually has we wait until our numbers through the FBI and through the BCA go through. Usually it doesn't happen until the end of December, end of January or so. And so we produce the report by usually mid-March and give it to the council then. And all of our, so you'll be able to see last year's annual report on our city website, and we have put it on our Facebook page before. We'll continue to do that. And remember that it's from the year prior. So, so for example, the one that you're seeing on our Facebook page or our web page now is from 2019, right? And so 2020s won't come out until March of 2021.
And if I remember correctly, when I voted early in person at Crystal City Hall, we exited past the police counter, and there was a copy of that there too, right?
Yep, we have printed copies on both the City Hall and the police department side of the building.
Okay, awesome. I do recall picking one of those up and finding it of interest to see the number of calls, and certainly more data would be helpful, but it's all trajectory.
Yep.
So I'm glad to see it joining us for 2021.
Ryan, I think the other question you alluded to there was in terms of how are we going to roll out, if you will, the information that we're doing this. And we haven't talked through it yet because we're trying to get all these moving parts together, but I would anticipate that document will be a place that we will encapsulate that as we have continued to look at our department and how we are doing things better and engaging in discussions with your group and with the council and with other folks. Here are the things that we are tangibly doing as goals in 21 towards getting to that end. So as opposed to more of and maybe depending on how things go, it might be sooner, but as opposed to a piecemeal, hey, we're doing this, hey, we're doing this, but really being able to give a comprehensive look of here are some of the things that we see kind of our direction going.
Yeah, and I think, based on, and I'll probably laugh at it and say it again, but even last time I brought up Golden Valley as a good resource of those that have taken some data points, implemented it, brought it to the public via the city website, and has kind of a nice citizen journey, as I'll call it. As a citizen, where you click, you see what it's about, and then you can go down the path to which you want to learn from. So I would definitely encourage you to check out how they do it. Obviously, our websites are very different. Technology outputs are and such are different, but that's something to check out and maybe let Ann and the city know about. If hey, this looks like it's well, or maybe there's other ideas that are even better than that one. But I can say that I've liked the way that they're able to easily put data out, and it doesn't require me clicking in and loading a document or having some type of extra addition to my browser or anything like a JavaScript. So just food for thought. So one of the things I want to ask about is, how do you feel in the past year you guys have done about, say, using your Facebook to discuss or to alert citizens? Do you think it's maintained the same from January through December, or do you think you've changed, you've increased the way that you do that?
We're proud. I'm gonna boast a little bit because we're very proud of our following on Facebook. we've won awards for our Facebook page statewide. So it's hard for me, you know, and Brian probably could answer this a little bit better than I can because he's one of the administrators of it, along with a couple other folks. And I would say that you know, we've got, you know, we only want to get better, right? So I would say that we have gotten better over the past year, just because we're putting probably additional things out there that maybe we haven't in the past. You know, we're trying to highlight not just things that we're looking for, right? We're highlighting the good. We're highlighting things that we know may have caused some angst in the community. For example, you know, we've had unfortunately several calls for service or, you know, homicides over the last you know, several months here, where we've posted a media release on the page due to the fact that several people were commenting on social media already, either on Nextdoor or Light of Crystal or their social media pages, and we wanted to get the true factual answers out there for folks. So I would say that we have done a better job over the past year. He's so cute. He's a big cat.
He's ready for dinner.
I don't know. But Brian, I don't know. I mean, would you say, I mean, I think we do a good job. Could we do better? I obviously anyone can do better at things, but I think that we're really in tune. Our guys are really good at, you know, they're not afraid to email Brian or Jen or Justin or Pete to say, hey, we need to get this out on Facebook because, you know, it's a good thing or something that we need to know from the residents or something like that.
Yeah, I think, you know, if certainly by comparison, I think we do a pretty good job when you look at other departments. The dilemma obviously always is, as much as everybody has a hunger for information, we're still talking about people's lives. And so when everybody wants to know every call and why was there an officer at the intersection of 32nd and Idaho, we have to taper that, if you will, with, yeah, but if that's your family member, you don't need the community to be in your business. So, you know, I think tips and events and, you know, feel good stuff, I think we do. Where we have to tread carefully is in how we deal with calls for service with people concerned with. So, for instance, the incident that we had last week with our mental health, I would argue that would normally be something, even though we have things like that happen in the city, we would. Am I feedback in here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're quite a bit. It's starting to grow.
How's that?
Better.
You can still hear it a little bit, but
Is that better?
yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
Perfect.
So the incident that we put out last week would probably not generally be one that we would put out because we're dealing with someone in crisis, and if that's me, I don't want everybody in my business. It's a hard moment. The reason that we chose to do that, as the chief alluded to, was that I got the chief and I both got a handful of notes from folks that various sites were very concerned about the activity in the area, and we thought, you know, what we want to do, even when we put out our press releases, is to say we even though we can't say anything, we don't believe that there's a concern for the community, that we want people to be calmed down, and if we thought there was a concern, we'd tell you. And that was the purpose of putting that out last week, really, was to say, this is an isolated incident. Here's the gist of what the incident was, and that's really the extent of what we're going to tell you. Again, to calm those neighbors who are up at 1 o'clock in the morning with a helicopter and lots of officers and somebody on a PA system in the neighborhood. But yeah, that's the struggle isn't necessarily trying to put the feel good stuff out and the events out. The struggle is trying to find that balance of what information do you put out about the calls that we're responding to?
Yeah, no, that's great to know and hear. And I think part of it is, on one hand, people are more dialed in, and maybe, you know, you never know with social media algorithms, is more happening, or are we just now seeing it because the algorithm? So I think there's just some kind of curiosity of is 2020, seeing more crime or more police response or less police response, and so I think that in the coming weeks, as you get more data, people will be interested in seeing what those facts are, and I know that even in our Facebook group, when these kind of incidents occur, that's a lot of the first thing people get concerned with is, oh my gosh, is there going to be an officer involved shooting? Is the right amount of force being used? And I think when you guys put a post out and quelled the concern, but then said this is where the information ends because it's a mental health issue, I think that helps us gain trust that if we call you, our business isn't going to be put out there, because I think that's another part of this is that mental health is a lot of calls, and so to have mental health information out there is definitely a concern, and we don't want people not to call if they need the help, especially as we bridge the next topic, which is the city council just approved the county's mental health person, a caseworker. So I think that's an exciting addition to our resources, and I'd love to take the next few minutes to hear from you, everything from kind of end to end as to what's next, what we can expect in our city from this help. And I know that they're not going to be proactive in joining calls, but just kind of letting us know of what's to come on that front.
Yeah, so Ryan, for the last, I would say almost probably 4 to 5 years, this is something that we've been researching at this department and city, to have an embedded mental health social worker with us. It took this long just because of the fact that we wanted to make sure that we got the right partnership, right? The good news is that we were able to partner with our neighboring cities, Robbinsdale and New Hope, along with having Hennepin County be the conduit of the actual embedded social worker piece. And so we saw a few cities around us that went this direction and went this route with Hennepin County, and we wanted to see how it worked for them. And they had nothing but praise for the embedded social worker with Hennepin County. So that's the route we chose to go down. It does cost some money, and that's the other piece to this that that took a little bit longer just because we wanted to make sure that we had it in our budget and that it was sustainable for the city council to be able to pass. And the fortunate piece that we're able to partner with our 2 neighboring cities that we can share the cost. So the person, actually, we're going to be doing some interviews here over the next week, and the person hopefully will be starting in the first or second week in January. And like you already said, they're not going to be someone that's riding in a car with the officer. They're going to come in on the back end, right? Which is, to me, the good thing. We want these folks that we come in contact with to get the available resources that we don't know how to provide them, right? Hennepin County has a plethora of resources that they're going to be able to help and provide these folks who are in crisis with the information that they need. For example, when and Brian actually is going to be having a meeting here soon with both neighboring cities and the person who's going to be the supervisor of our mental health social worker to discuss what direction and how it is that we are going to give the information to the social worker. Meaning, obviously, we want the folks who are repeat callers of ours, because obviously they're the ones that are going to need the help. So we want those folks to get that information first. But we're just trying to work out those kinks since this is new to us. And I'm hoping that, by February or March or so, we'll see how good this is going to be for both the 3 cities or all 3 cities in our area. This is something that I'm very passionate about because in the 23 years I've been here, I've seen many mental health calls over the last several years, and the fact that we have people who are in need of such a resource when they can't do it themselves, right? And they may not have family to help them or to support them. They'll now have somebody to give them the help that they deserve.
Awesome. Appreciate the info. How you don't have to answer this now, but when it comes time for that job, introduction to the community, unless you know the answer now, just curious how we can, a year from that hire, be able to gauge the impact. So I think that, because what I would love to know is a year from now, can I be advocating to the city council that, hey, this is really effective. We need more. So, and so hopefully even we would know something, say by September or August even, if it's that important or not important. It's going to be important, that evident that that it's working. So I think as someone that's advocating for resources in an under-resourced community, I'd love to be able to know what data or insight I may be able to gain so I can help advocate for these kind of resources.
I think the good thing is, even though I mean we are at the front end, if you look at all of the agencies around the county, but there are I think 4 or 5 agencies that have been doing this over the course of the last couple of years. Obviously, the good news for us is we're not number one. We're not doing it the first way, and so I believe that those groups, as we've talked with them, have determined some of the way that the data points can be collected, right? I mean, part of the issue is how do you put a tangible to, we got someone some resource and we got them some help. And so we didn't get another 911 call for a crisis situation with them. Well, you could argue maybe we wouldn't have anyway. But we certainly are going to be able to recognize how many people we've had contact with, how many people the social worker has had contact with, and what resources we've been able to afford them. And then I will look to the other communities that have been doing this, who using Bloomington as the example. Bloomington started this program, I believe, 4 years ago, and are actually adding a second one next year. So obviously they've used a metrics to evaluate that this is very, very helpful for their team and their community. So I think when this meeting that the chief alluded to that we're going to have, I think partly we'll look to the experts, which is the county, to help us figure out what is it that we should be measuring. And again, anecdotally, we can determine whether or not we have seen a decrease in repeat calls or violent calls or whatever. But I think there's probably some matrix out there that we'll be able to use from some of the groups that have been paving the way on this.
Yeah, or possibly even feedback from the individual that's getting the resource.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. We appreciate your guys' time and insight on that topic. One of the other ones that is floating about is the state legislature in recent months and years has talked about a statewide implementation of, say, a citizen police advisory board. Some cities already have that, like St. Louis Park. I have my personal opinions on it. I'm looking to obviously if the state mandates it through legislature, it is what it is. It's coming, whether you guys like it or not. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on this type of board, if you're familiar with it, and what kind of value you feel it could potentially add to you guys as a police department.
Yeah, we're definitely familiar with it, and I'm definitely so I'm not against a police advisory board, not at all. We welcome, this is one of the reasons why we wanted our JCPP program here, Joint Community Police Partnership Program, so that we could have a MAC group, which is it's not an advisory board to the police department. However, it falls under the police department's umbrella. And we meet on a monthly basis, as to take insight from them and for us to garner and establish relationships with our diverse population. That's the purpose of that group. I am certainly not opposed to a citizen advisory group at all. The question, though, for me is we have to be very careful with certain private information or confidential information, right? So, for example, if it came to a discipline issue, for example, with an officer, and I'll tell you that, you know, we hold here in Crystal our officers to a high standard, and I know that every chief can say that, but I promise you that that is done here, and the problem is, though, is that I can't go around and tell people that, right? I can't tell you, Ryan, that you know, I can tell you that last year we disciplined so many folks because that's something that we have to report to the post board, right? But I can't go into great detail with you about the discipline because it's not public information, right? But I can certainly share with you and the public, you know, what it is that, how many complaints that we've received, you know, on our officers, or how many, the steps that we're taking to make sure that our officers are held to a higher standard and that they're held accountable for their actions, and, you know, what it is that they have, that we've learned from, you know, certain things that may have been done. So it's not, I want to make sure that, you know, everyone here who's listening hears that we're certainly not opposed to having an advisory board here. I like the fact that I like these community forums. I will tell you that, and I won't speak for Brian, but for me, you know, we've held community forums prior to me and you meeting, Ryan, and I find those so beneficial because I feel that people are honest, you know, and they were able to tell me at last year's forum that, you know, they're concerned about, you know, the use of force in police departments, and what have we as the Crystal Police Department done, you know, with regards to use of force. And I look to the community forums as something that really has been an advisory board, if you will, even though it's not an official advisory board. I like keeping it the way we've done it. But again, if it's something that is needed, and if it's something that our community wants, I'm not opposed to it at all. I've heard from residents that they appreciate the fact that our police department is very transparent, is very open, and I hope that if we're not, that people are okay with telling me that, or telling Brian that, telling us what it is that we need to do differently.
I would only, obviously, I'll defer to the chief on the question, but the only thing I would add is, I think, it is really more about what is it that the group does. So if you look at St. Louis Parks Advisory Board, for instance, I think they have a broader goal, if you will, than what our MAC does.
Right.
But the concept is similar, that we want some folks who similar to yourself, who have decided to immerse themselves in a better understanding of how things operate, how things are going, and then based on that knowledge say, okay, I understand that, but this doesn't seem okay. This seems problematic, and so let's have a dialogue about it. I think where it becomes more problematic is, if you look at the history of some of those boards, I would argue nobody wants them to turn political. Nobody wants them to turn into somebody's got a crusade, and I use that term loosely. But what everybody wants is a police department that is serving the needs of all citizens the right way. And if everybody can agree on that's the goal, and I think part of that, frankly, is where I think we go wrong, as we've shared with you before, is when police departments come into that discussion already going, nothing you're going to teach me. They're not going to be any opportunity for change here because we know how to do this. That's where it falls flat. But certainly, I would, as the chief and I have talked about this at great length, I think when you start talking about supervision, accountability, contracts, employment, that kind of stuff, there's a whole different robust discussion that would have to happen there. But in terms of a conversation of groups of people in whatever forum who are given candid feedback about what's happening, well, I think the chief has proven for a number of years that we'll take that in any way that it comes. And if it seems like there's a group there's a need to form some group to do that, then I think we're going to get behind it.
Awesome. Well, it's great to hear. I'm glad that you guys maintain and remain an open book. One reason why I bring it up, and it's not even a reflection of you guys and your role. It's more so that if those that are actually elected to city council, if they aren't, asking these kind of questions and exploring this, then, as citizens, I say, then delegate it. I mean, I would, so on a separate avenue, I'm pressuring those at the council to do more, be more aware, ask more, and really immerse themselves, responsibly in this topic, in this area. And if they don't have the interest or the bandwidth, then certainly a citizen advisory board may play a better role and a better resource to advise the council, because that's really what that advisory board would do, is advise the council, work with you guys, have a liaison. I think that as long as you guys continue this type of community engagement, it serves similar to the same purpose as you just mentioned. And so I and others are very grateful for this opportunity. And we just hope it can continue, and that ideally we can get a group of community members to organize a larger forum that others can kind of tune into. That's not necessarily our private group on Facebook, that we also channel out to YouTube for those that are interested. But again, thank you guys for
the only other thing I'd say to that, Ryan, would be, for me, and I'm not going to speak for the chief on this, so she can tell me, give me that look that says we're done. I think the only place that I start to get nervous when you use the term citizen advisory board or police accountability, all that kind of stuff, is when we say, and that board will have the final decision on employee discipline. That to me, that's the only place where I go, you can work into the system that there should be a way for citizens to be a part of it. I'm going to argue that is really right now is the city council. But I say shy of that idea of who has the final higher fire. For me, I go, yeah, everything else is on the table for discussion within the confines of what we can share legally and how that dialogue can happen. So,
yeah.
Tell me if I spoke out.
No, right. Here's the thing is, because we're a Charter B city, right? Anne is actually the one who has the, higher firing decision. So she, I make a recommendation to her, and then her and I have a dialogue about it. And ultimately it is her decision. Now, and she's listening, but I can't see her face when I say this. 9 times out of 10, and I'll see if she calls me or texts me later, but 9 times out of 10, she is, goes with what I'm going to recommend to her, right? Because I am supposed to be her expert witness, if you will, regarding those situations. So, Ryan, I will tell you this too. One of the things, when you brought up the city council, we have quarterly updates with them with regards to police department matters, right? So besides our usual, in April when I give them the annual report, we're going to be meeting with them, 4 to 5 times a year regarding police issues and police department updates and what we're doing in the police department. And I will tell you, and I'm going to fall on the sword a little bit here, and hopefully Anne doesn't cringe, but when I first became chief, it's no secret that we had some, employee issues going on. And I will say, looking back on it now, and wishing, when you could wish to do things differently. One of the things that I wish I personally could have done things differently is at the time, being a new chief, I didn't know the city council very well, right? And I was a little apprehensive at giving them too much information because I was afraid on what they were going to do with it, right? And really all they're doing, like you've said before, is they're trying to hold me and the department accountable for what we're doing. And really that's all they were looking for. And knowing that now, right, and understanding that information and the experience that I've gained now over the last several years, I know that that's what they want. And I know that they do not want to be the city that's in the paper, with their police chief or their police officers making bad decisions. Now, that being said, we're human, right? And we make sometimes, split-second decisions, and sometimes those decisions may unfortunately not be the best choice. But that is definitely something that we are very open to talk about, because as you know, it's transparency is huge to Brian and I and to this entire department. And we really want to make sure that our residents feel comfortable with their police department.
No, it's great to hear. As a follow-up, I think when it comes to like St. Louis Park, I'll have to double check these before it's considered fact, but their advisory board doesn't have the hire fire ability, but they do have the ability to provide their recommendation as a 11-person board. So I think that's the only thing where it comes in as a benefit, is when you can get 11 different minds that can provide their opinion on the matter under sworn secrecy, as is the expectation with that community group. So I think that there's certainly ways to set this up to be a productive and an accountable and legally safe space. But again, that's for the city attorney, city manager, and folks to work out in accordance with whatever ordinance that may get passed by the city council. Certainly, that's where it starts, if not with state legislature. So we'll see if anything does come over the years. But again, I don't foresee that happening for as long as departments like yours really stay open and transparent and are able to convey to us that accountability is being had. I think that the major cities will continue to struggle with that, but we're fortunate to be a smaller community and stronger ties, and so we'll continue to use that fortunate side of things. So our next topic is about early warning systems. So there are cities out there that are working towards software or other types of methods to help identify, to flag officers' behavior for early intervention. Have you heard of any of these systems? Do you currently have one, or what are your thoughts on those?
Yeah, so we don't have anything right now. I have heard of these systems. I haven't had a chance to look at any of them to see what it is that folks are using. I will say this though, we are a small organization, right? I mean, we're 34 cops. We have about 15 or so non-sworn staff members. And so I can see where the early warning systems would be very beneficial in a much larger agency. I'm not saying that that's something that we're not going to look at. I'm just saying I can see it being beneficial in a much larger agency. If something's going on with one of our staff, we know about it. And the reason is because, again, we're smaller. Our sergeants are not afraid to hold their team accountable, nor are they afraid to go up the chain of command and tell us, if they're concerned about something, if they're concerned because, say, one of our officers' parents died, or they're, or God forbid, something else bad happened in their life, and they're struggling, with it. We're a close-knit group here, and I'll tell you that we implemented a mandate where our officers will be meeting with a licensed therapist at least once a year. And so that's something that we started here in just this month, and we're excited about it. I think it's going to be beneficial for not just the cops, but for our community to know that, we're trying to take care of our staff, because we know this is a stressful job. We know this is a hard job, and we want to make sure that we have the best people out there working for them.
So a quick follow-up on that, because it kind of leads to another area of topics, is I think it was Minneapolis just passed a policy interdepartment that allows their officers like 10 free sessions of counseling. So say this one counseling session, it's identified, or the officer elects, like, I would like 10 more of these. How does that work for our department currently?
Yeah, if the consultant and the officer just determines that it'd be beneficial for the officer to have more therapy sessions, then that's something that we certainly are going to do.
Okay. Is there any barriers to them? The cost, for example, is that going to be a barrier for them?
For the officer? No.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Okay.
So we've contracted with this therapist who specializes in first responders. for a set number of sessions, which includes really more than one for all of our staff if they were all to partake in it. And it's which is key if you understand the world of law enforcement. The key is that that therapist sends us a bill that says I met with people, and keeps track of that. And the only thing that the department gets is basically, because it's a requirement, we get a list of who has fulfilled the requirement. They have a their discussion is HIPAA protected. So what they discuss doesn't come back to us. Obviously, if there was if the person was actively suicidal, for instance, the therapist has a duty to assist them. But what we've said then in that block that we've purchased is the agreement we've made is the therapist and the staff member that's meeting, and this is for all of our staff, not just our officers, our civilian staff as well, that if the feel is that you need additional sessions, you've got this block, take the additional sessions and go ahead and schedule them and send the bill. And then the discussion that she and I had was, and if you exhaust that, then give me a call and we'll figure out a way to get additional sessions if we need to. And we do have, we provide this as an opportunity. It's all cost paid. We do have probably some staff members that have their own therapist that they use. And, our mandate is that you have to go at least once, and we're going to cover the cost of that. But certainly since I've been here, we've had officers that have, before we had this set up, that have gone, and we've covered that cost. So we recognize that this is, fortunately, one of the places that we're evolving in the profession is an understanding of what we do in this job is just simply not normal, and anything you're going to try and do to make it normal it just has made it more difficult over the years. So that got a little less play with the council, but the council did approve that extra funding for us to move forward with that as well. And I think it's huge for our staff. The folks who have already done it in the last 6-8 weeks, the feedback so far has been very positive.
Awesome. That's great to hear, because we know that officer health is extremely important to how they respond to our community members, as well as their education. But if their emotion overrides their education, it's not great for any of us. So we appreciate that. We are here to advocate for more resources for improving and maintaining great officers' mental health. So feel free to let us know if there's anything we can do from a citizen side to tell the council, like, hey, this is important. We see it in the community, and we read about it and are well in tune to the significance of it. We just want to make sure that they are getting access, and not just access, but also removing the barriers that can hinder them from actually using these resources. We already know that in society, masculinity is already a barrier. So anything we can do to unpack that, to at least in inner department, to say it's not weak to get these resources, because we also want to pass that on to the community. It's not weak to get these resources. And even if officers are on call and they talk to somebody and say, hey, this helps. I think those kind of experiences, if they so choose to disclose them, can go a long ways.
Yeah, and I would, I don't know that it's magical. There's nothing magical about it, but the wisdom of this is the fact that everybody from the chief down is required to do this at least once, and that's all we know about is that everybody went once. We don't know anybody. We don't know if people go additional times. We take that stigma. You're not 3 out of 40 people who are now seeing a therapist. All 40 of us are seeing a therapist, and so the hope is that normalizes that. Certainly, we've been better in the last number of years because we have seen a very, very disconcerting trend in suicide in law enforcement the last 5 years. That really working to cut that stigma down has been important for that. The other thing I would share that fits along with this is, and we've been doing it for a while, but it's really important to us, is anytime we have a critical incident, some incident of significance that occurs, it could be maybe a graphic death scene, it could be a high intensity scene. we will, within a week or so, invite all of those that were involved to a debriefing by a critical incident group that comes in. Only folks that were present for the incident can be there. No supervisors, I mean, unless the supervisor was a part of it. And that has proven for a number of years to be very effective to get on top of that buildup at that moment, to be able to release it, to be able to hear everybody's perspective on what they saw from their angle. I know of probably 50 of those debriefs since I've been an officer, and I have yet to hear one person say that they left that feeling like that wasn't helpful. So, it's not, it allows everybody permission to feel and to be hurt or sad or frustrated or whatever.
No, that's great insight. Those are things that we don't know that happen behind the scenes, after the scenes. So that's good to hear. And like I said, if there's any other resources that those kind of situations need, we in the community want to be sure we can advocate for them. So kind of changing topics here in our final minutes. We have two kind of topics to broach yet. One is pretty broad. Just a topic of violence prevention. The question really is around: are there areas of Crystal that your leadership team has identified as areas to focus more resources on to prevent crime or violence, or what is your philosophy on violence prevention, and what involvement, if any, does the city council have in that?
So, good question. Ryan, as you know, we're 5.5 square miles, right? 22,300 or so population. So we have a lot of folks in a very dense, small area. And then we have folks coming from other cities, right, that come in and either come shopping here or education here or visit family and friends here. And so, our calls for service are everywhere in the 5.5 square miles. I'll tell you that obviously the thefts, retail theft, stuff like that, a lot of that is happening on our north end of town because that's where our retail businesses are. However, we do have Cub Foods right down on our south end of town where, that has a lot of thefts as well. When we know of for example, if we know that carjackings are happening throughout our neighboring communities or happening here in our city, and it's happened more than once in a particular neighborhood, then we're going to focus our efforts on targeted resources in that area, right? But I'll just tell you, because of, we're a city that you have 34 officers. At any given time, you have anywhere, you could have, 5 to 7 officers, but you may not have that many officers on due to vacation, sickness, and other, trainings, that type of thing. And so our officers are busy. They go from, sometimes depending on the day, from call to call, and not doing any proactive police work, or they're doing very good community engagement work, which we do on a regular basis. And so it's hard for me to, I will say yes to your question, that yes, if we know that there are instances happening for targeted violence, we are definitely putting our resources there. But with that said, I don't want you to think, and I don't want to bamboozle our community in saying that we have 10 million police officers out there, because we just don't, and we just don't have the resources to do that. But I also don't want our community to be frightened or scared because we're a phone call away, right? And so I want to make sure that they understand that no matter what, we're there. The good news is a lot of our crime it's not random crime. And what I mean by that is, the unfortunate homicides that we've had happen, they're not random, right? They're known to one another. Unfortunately, either a domestic situation or friend situation or what have you. So that is, to me, even though that's a horrible situation, it's good news for our residents that it's not random, right? Unfortunately, do we have folks who are out there stealing cars? We do. And that's unfortunate. However, the good news is to that is that our officers are out there on a regular basis making sure that our community is safe. And that's our primary concern, as you already know. I hope that answers your question.
It does, for the most part. And I know that you guys recently, even with the Cadillac converters, put out a Facebook post and kind of said, hey, here's what to look for. And I think those are important instances too of, educating those of what is a sign of concern, and just keeping us aware of instances and when things are happening, a trend or anything that, we're up to date. I'm just curious, as a follow-up to that are there any crime prevention forums? Is that something you're doing, with the city council, saying, hey, here's what we're seeing?
Yeah, so I don't know if I've ever shared this with you. We have a crime prevention board, a group of residents here in the community. And we've had this crime prevention board since about 2007 or so, 2008. And it's about right now a 6-member board that's made up of residents and business owners in our community. Right now, I think it's primarily residents. And they meet on a bi-monthly basis with me and or Brian, and discuss what has been going on in the community with regards to how they can help with crime prevention or what it is that they can do. They also fundraise for us. So they're the group that actually, if you've been here a year, but we've had like canine, when we had our canine Rocco, they did a canine run for him for several years, for 4 or 5 years, and they sponsored that event. They sponsor several events for our police department and for the community. They, for example, they purchased cell phone holders for our residents that are free to them that they can pick up here. They've purchased the blue lights at the traffic intersections where we were having a lot of traffic accidents at busy intersections, where the blue light actually will change to red if somebody, or not change to red, it'll alert an officer if somebody actually goes through the light, and on the other side the officer can see that they went through a red light because that blue light changes. So they've done really good work for the community. The city council is well aware of this group because they have been to many of the events that the Crime Prevention Board has hosted. So if you know of anybody that is interested because they are looking for board members, just please reach out to me and I can get you in contact with the president of the board.
Okay. No, that'd be great. I know we are aware of them. There's a little bit of concern and consensus that they're not diverse, and that some of the attitudes on the board don't necessarily reflect diversity and inclusion. So especially of how we do react to those that have committed a crime, that a lot of assumption that they're lifelong criminals. And there's a little bit of, it'd be great to get new blood and new thinking into that group. And so I think that's something I would definitely take your offer up on, is sharing that information with our group who has some of those, they've been learning, they've been addressing their own, past racism and how to, change groups and workplaces and such going forward. So I'd love to undo some of the pre-existing thinking that exists about that group, and injecting new blood and new thinking will help.
Are you talking about the Crime Prevention Board group?
Yes, the Crystal specifically one.
Oh, maybe this is something, maybe we can talk offline. This is something that I'm not aware of about maybe some of the things that you're hearing about them.
Yeah, no, would love to further connect with you. And for me, it's being here only a year. I get a lot of hearsay and a lot of people's, past experience from 5, 10, 15 years in the community. So I take some of it with a grain of salt, but I've definitely seen as trying to get information from that group, how it could be perceived in those ways. So, but yeah, I think it's another great avenue of how we further our policing and communication and community trust. So we look forward to kind of building a triangle to that group and making sure that we can all move in the same direction.
Yeah, I'm sure the president is Brooke Raker. She would be more than happy to have a conversation with you.
Yes, that's right. So Brooke she is in the group, I believe, and has been a great contributor to thinking, but also information that is about their group as well as the MAC. So she's been a contributor, since May. It's just I think it's maybe some of those have now left because she does. She's so level-minded that maybe I'll talk to Brooke and see if there's some opportunity for members of our group to get involved, especially those that maybe didn't get to join the MAC because it's overrepresented or they were part of a overrepresented pool of Caucasian community members. Can be an opportunity for those folks.
We may be talking about two different things. So the MAC.
I blended them between MAC and the advisory board.
Okay.
But, yes, no, I'm aware.
Okay, I gotcha. Yep, they're two separate boards. Yep, two separate.
Yeah, but I think you said that there were some people that weren't able to get on the MAC, right? Because it was just too representative of the same group of people. Is that correct, or did that change?
No.
I don't know, and don't quote me on this. I'd have to double check, but I don't know that we have turned people who have been interested away from involvement with the MAC.
No, we did early on.
Yeah, I say early on. I thought you said you did. Okay.
We did early on, and we did early on because we wanted a more diverse group of folks on the MAC, and so we had already had several Caucasian folks that were on the MAC, and so we turned down a Caucasian female because we wanted more diversity, and so and we were very honest about that. So I don't know if that's what maybe you're referring to, possibly.
Yeah, because that's what you had discussed with us in a meeting. And I guess that maybe we didn't know number of persons. One person is certainly not a lot. So.
Right, just the one. Yeah.
Good to know. Okay.
The other thing I would say, Ryan, is just because I think I would be remiss in not saying it. I would be, and again, I know that Brooke would like to hear the feedback. I've sat in on a number of the crime board meetings, and I frankly would be curious what people's perception of what has occurred there that wouldn't. I mean, their goal is to say we want a safe community, we want to support that, and we want to support the police department. And I try to keep an open lens to that, and I'm not sure that I've seen it. So I would want to make sure that if there is a perception out there that that's the case, that either we correct the perception if the perception's wrong, or we make sure that they get that feedback, because I don't know that I've seen that, frankly.
Yeah, and to be clear, it's perception of, say, being pro stop and frisk, being, hey, there's a black guy in a hoodie in my alley. Those kind of concerns coming from some of the members of the group that are just purely unwarranted, just based on people being suspicious because of their skin color. So I think that's been the concern, is like I could walk down a Crystal Alley and people say hi to me, but if I was on a bicycle, black and in a hoodie, I'd be suspicious looking for open garages. So I think that's some of the stuff that we've seen come from that group, that people just need to remind folks, like, hey, this is not necessarily suspicious. I think drawing the line.
My only pushback would be, I think the differentiation may be that there might be some members of that group who have said that or made those statements. But again, in 2.5 years, I've probably attended 7 of those meetings, and never has that been suggested or condoned. And so I just would want to be careful that the group and the individuals of the group, I mean, obviously everybody who's a part of your group doesn't necessarily prescribe to everything that everybody else says, but I would be a little nervous. I just don't want that reputation out there because they've done good work. But if there are perceptions of the individuals on that group, then I think there's a great learning opportunity for those folks. But I would be remiss in not pushing back to say nothing like that has ever been the narrative. They meet for an hour and they're talking about what events can we do, what's coming up, what do we need to do. We give a report. It's not really a lot of dialogue on their part about what should we be doing more of. So I just think it's important to point out.
Yeah, no, it's great to hear. And again, I think that's the different accountability of how do you hold that advisory board accountable? Because how they are compared to how our group is our group is, as you said, it's a forum of individuals and individual opinions. And I've been fortunate at times to represent that voice, but I do come to this meeting as just an individual. So not representing an organization or a group or collective minds unless I say otherwise. But I think, yeah, that's great to hear. I'll follow up with Brooke. And I can say that, yes, I've definitely never seen anything racist put out by that body. It's just more of the offline conversation by some of those members. And I'm looking forward to sharing out, once I learn from Brooke, how others can get involved that certainly may represent the diverse community to which does reside here, similar to the MAC.
One other thing I would point out about kind of crime prevention piece, kind of tangent off there, but it's, to me, there's two different pieces, right? There's a general crime prevention piece, and then there's a violence prevention piece. And the crime prevention piece, I mean, I'll say, as long as I remain in this profession, and it doesn't matter where I work, that the best crime prevention is people just paying attention and being engaged, knowing their neighbors, and being able to see what they know. If I know you, then I know what's going on in your neighborhood and in your yard. And so I mean, we want people to engage at that level, partly because that's where we all want to live. But we try to, as you alluded to, the catalytic converter theft, it's that time of year where packages get stolen. It's the time of year where people are warming up their cars and cars are getting stolen. And that's not unique to Crystal. That is a problem that happens in every community every year. And so we want to try and point those out as a gentle reminder. But the other piece I would say in terms of the violence piece is, I think the statistics bear out. Crystal is not a violent community. As the chief alluded to, we don't have a lot of random violent crimes. If you look at the homicides we've had this year, none of them were random. All three of them were targeted. When we talk about violence prevention, and again, I don't want to speak for the chief, but my observation in being here, our violence prevention stems in our commitment to continuing to push back on domestic violence. If I look at the crime trend and what I see for violence when I'm reading reports in this community, it is domestic violence. And so if we want the far-reaching domestic violence, the far-reaching violence prevention initiative, it's for us to continue to push the narrative that domestic violence is not okay, and that people need help, and it needs to be okay, and we need to get resources for them. But in terms of randomness, fortunately, our residents need to know you can walk to the park, you can walk to Chipotle, and you're going to be fine in this city.
And that's good to know, because that just immediately sparks in mind to me is getting information into public female bathrooms. If the assumption in the data says that females are predominantly the victim, especially in our community, I'd love to work with you guys and the CBA and the City Council to come up with some of those campaigns too, to make sure that, again, our resources and stuff is activated, and we can get that information to those that are at most risk in our community. So if that's a viable idea, again, I'd love to talk offline to, as I hear about what are our concerns, I think that we have a wealth of community interest that could be activated to from volunteerism, activated to ideation, and so yeah, again, please continue to feed us some of the information that can help us help you and help our community. But I know we're over. We always have this kind of ongoing conversation. I do think that there are some things to still discuss. I think that some of those things that remain are just stronger challenges to existing policy. And I think that the best way to have that conversation might be to have in person on the next time around, to invite a few that may have that interest, or if we can figure out a way to make it in person and viewable through this technology, that's great. But just as a preface to that, I think there's a desire to talk about what's required and what's not, and obviously talking through what's possible and what's not is part of that. But for example, revisiting current policy on the body cameras and the rules that exist or don't exist pertaining to officers availability. So we know that recently Minneapolis passed policy change there. I'll just broad stroke it because we don't want to go into the details because we'd spend another 20 minutes on it. But so that's just a preface of an area of conversation. I think there's still some desire to understand the potential and the tools of, say, the technology. If an officer removes their gun from their belt, that automatically triggers body cameras. I don't know if that exists or not in our department, but something to discuss. And obviously, cost and all that stuff is always going to be a factor and a point of discussion. And then lastly, I think one of the other hot topics is oh my gosh, why am I drawing a blank on it? The I just had it up on my screen. Oh, that's gonna be an epic failure on my part because I kept scrolling past that thought, thinking like, oh, I won't forget that one. That one's important. I guess I'll have to come back to the next meeting with it.
No worries.
But again, like I said, just revisiting some of the current things and just maybe pushing you a little bit harder than I have in the past couple meetings, because again, we're still going through so much discovery and conversation, and that we're starting to. I don't want to say see us be the first to pass something because there's not enough data, but I think we're starting to see enough policy get passed, nationwide, that hopefully we can start thinking about not necessarily saying we should do this, but saying, hey, that is an idea. Let's keep an eye on it, and let's look at this 6 months from now and 12 months from now and see how it's impacted that community. Unless we see that, hey, that could really change us today. So I guess that's kind of where I want to leave things with you guys tonight, is that I think that's where my interest lies in our conversation is continuing to evaluate what others are doing and seeing how that might translate to our community so that we can continue to be proactive. I know, Brian, you're always doing this with our policies, and you'll probably always be ahead of me on this. But again, just kind of keeping that open dialogue with you so I can send you an email with a list of, hey, here's the things that we're thinking about, so that you can, especially next time, do some homework on certain ones so we can kind of take an extra layer deep, and then you can help us from a community aspect understand like why that is or is not possible. Again, because we want to know, is this a state legislature thing? Like we learned with state IDs, like how's the best way we can get you data? And that's through state legislature putting race on our IDs, and it's already in the system. Like that was a great insight that I immediately went to Mike Freeberg and Ann Rest and said, hey, we want this. And Mike Freeberg responded like, oh yeah, I know, I've already voiced this this desire. So that's kind of where we're at and where I think I'd like to see us continue to go.
That sounds good, Ryan. And you just let me know, what works for you and your team of people. And if you want to do it as soon as January or February, obviously we have to be cognizant. Brian and I are more than willing to meet in person. Obviously, we just want to be cognizant of COVID, obviously, and the governor's order. And we certainly can provide the space. So you just let me know what works for you.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And same. I think that we'll have this, ongoing, connection for months and hopefully years to come. And I think that, we're definitely seeing an audience, go back to their normal lives of privilege. But I think that there's still a handful of us that are in this for the long term to continue to be of help to you guys, but also to be responsible, citizens and engage and use our time and energy in areas we feel like we can, be of use and help. And so I think you'll continue to hear from, Amanda wasn't able to make it tonight, but those like Amanda, myself, and several others.
Sounds great.
Well, thanks again for your guys' time, and
Thank
I'll
you.
be sure to send you the YouTube and keep us connected.
That sounds good. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Have a good night.